Yeah, thanks, Sheila. Good. Thanks very much, Sheila. Thanks, everybody. Thanks both to Sheila and Hannah Reed over at Cranbrook for the chance to do this and for their support through this. Great to reach out to everybody. Hope March is off to a good start for you. Certainly nice and sunny here in Michigan, so looking forward to a great spring now that we've gone through what turned out to be a pretty mild winter. So let's chat a little bit today about counseling through the college counseling process. Um, Here's what we're going to try and cover today. First, we're just going to talk about some big picture stuff. Then we'll talk about the college counseling curriculum itself, and hopefully that will generate some questions that you have, which we'll get to at the end. Um, my hope today is that this program is really designed for everybody. I'm hoping that the more veteran counselors who have joined us will use this as an opportunity to sort of stop and take a look at the big picture of college counseling, and that those who may be a little more new to it will do that and also have a chance to sort of get some ideas in terms of how to bring it all to life and make the nuts and bolts happen. So let's go ahead and begin there, shall we? Okay, so um, I, I think sometimes, particularly in places where there is in high schools where there's an expectation that students will go to college, I think sometimes our audiences sort of suck us into the belief that the purpose of college counseling is to get a student into a school, and I, you know, you have to be really careful with that because some really bad things happen when those folks decide when those folks and their opinions sort of drive your program. Um, this isn't about getting folks in. I've been doing this since 1984. I have never once gotten a student into a college. I've helped students make good choices about what's next in their lives, and for many of those kids, that involved college. But that's really sort of the big picture. The big picture is for us to help them address the question, "What's next in your life?" And so to do that, I think there are three sort of key phases of college counseling, and that's expose, advise, and manage. So when we talk about exposing a student to college counseling, we're really talking about making sure they have enough awareness of what's out there to make a thoughtful decision about what option they should pursue after high school that makes the most sense for them. So, if you're going into if you're going into a college to a high school community where everybody's sort of used to going to a 4-year college, it's going to be important to make sure that they understand that there are different kinds of 4-year colleges, number one, but also that 4-year college isn't always the answer. That sometimes you start at a 2-year college, sometimes you start and end at a 2-year college, and sometimes it's not even that. It's 3 to 8 months of technical training that get you off into the career you're looking for. So making sure they understand the wide array of options, and then talking about how those options relate to each other. Do you have to start at a 4-year institution? Do you have to start at a community college? Or is there a first step that could make a lot more sense? And in particular, for me, it's that step from technical training to community college that I think sort of gets lost in the sauce. Michigan is blessed to have a very strong manufacturing and manufacturing economy still. And so for a lot of students who may not be thinking about college or maybe thinking about it, but feel like they need to get into the world of work, technical training is really kind of be a nice step for that, because they can get 3 to 8 months worth of training, get into a manufacturing job that's going to pay them, way more than a sandwich shop or a McDonald's. Get them into the $45,000 to $50,000 range pretty quickly, with benefits, and then all of a sudden that gives them, a 4 or 5 year window where at the end of that they're going to have enough money and interest and opportunity to go to college. So think helping students see the steps, if they feel like they can't make the ultimate leap to a 4-year college, showing them the steps proves to be important. Again, determining if their interests and goals really need to include college. Sometimes that's not a popular opinion, and I can understand why, because the average bachelor's degree holder still makes a whole lot more than the average technical college student. But at the same time, again, it might be an appropriate first step as one of many. And then finally, I'm a big advocate of making sure that if a student is convinced college isn't for them, um, you really want to. It's going to be time to explore that. And again, you want to respect the opinions of your student, but sometimes their decision about why college isn't for them is based on information that just simply isn't accurate. Um, we see this a lot with students who will be the first in their family to go to college or low income, because their parents didn't go to college. They don't really know what college is all about, and providing that information could be helpful. And as part of that information, understanding that you don't necessarily have to know what you're going to major, and that's more than okay. And what you see there is a link to an article I wrote just a couple of weeks ago about the importance of making sure students understand that. But again, particularly with parents who did not go to college, there are going to be a lot of parents who say, well, my kid doesn't know what he wants to major in. Why am I going to waste all this money? Well, there are colleges designed to help students make decisions about what they major in for the first 2 years they actually go to college. And so making sure that people don't overstress the importance of major can open up some options for them. And then, of course, finally, the student who feels they can't afford it, and that's where something like the it's not called the FAFSA forecaster anymore, but there's a program the federal government runs online where the student types in about 5 pieces of financial information to give them a ballpark estimate of what kind of college they can afford. All of that information really opens up possibilities. Once a student has a completed financial aid form in front of them and they see that college is possible, then at that point, that's when things start to open up. So when you've got kids who automatically say, "Nah, that's just not my choice," don't hesitate to step up a little bit and say, "Nah, tell me a little bit more about that. Let's have a conversation." Okay, once the student who has made a decision that college is going to be part of their life, you're going to advise them. This is where things it becomes a little more of a logistical discussion about timelines and application process and all that stuff. But before then, are some meaningful conversations about things like the key elements of college readiness. Um, you know, the we get a lot of students who are like, well, come in 9th grade and say, well, what do I have to do to be ready for college? And it's like, realistically, for me, for the average student in 9th grade, there's 3 things they need to do. Take the most challenging classes they can reasonably handle, participate in meaningful extracurricular activities, and engage in community service. Now, some students put too much emphasis on community service and say, well, that's going to get me into college. My perspective on community service is more along the lines of the exposure that it gives the student to the broader world. Um, a lot of times we see students who academically are ready for college but then get there and sort of fall apart for a whole lot of reasons that have nothing to do with doing well in the classroom. And so if you start in 9th grade with those good classes, but also expose yourself to learning activities through extracurriculars and understand what teamwork means and what it means to learn in the real world, and then what it means to give back to the real world, those things are going to guarantee or do more to guarantee that the student will be successful in college. So, and then of course, they have to, go through a meaningful college search to find the places that make the most amount of sense to them, what it means to make a strong campus visit, especially if students are not able to actually physically visit the campuses. I'm a big champion for physical on-campus visits, but there are lots of websites, thanks to COVID. There are lots of virtual tours and other things that colleges have really stepped up in to allow students to do that if they can't get to campus. As I said, then assist with steps in the application process for admission and financial aid, and then work to make a final decision and help support their transition to make sure that now that they've bothered to apply and get admitted and pay for college, that they actually get there and that they don't think twice about it and have doubts that prevent them from doing what's really in their best interest all along. So that's the advise phase. And then finally manage. If you're working with in a community where there is an expectation that college is what happens, sometimes you end up that you have to manage the expectations of quite a few people, not just the student, but the parents, the teachers, and other community members. So this isn't just a question of the kid who comes in as a junior with a 2.5 GPA and says, I want to go to Harvard. But as much as it's sometimes, the expectations that other people put on the student about what they think is best for the student. And so this can very easily be part of the process that gets overlooked. And so in talking about things like the range of colleges the student should apply to, the likelihood of admission of a particular college for a particular student, the likelihood of financial support, and then of course fit and match. For those of you who are not familiar with those, fit basically means the ability of that it's a good place for the student. When we talk about fit, we're really saying that it's a college where the student has the right amount of opportunity, challenge, and support. That's really what fit is all about: opportunity, challenge, and support. And match means that academically the institution makes sense and the likelihood of admission is good. So we have to pay attention to that part, because what we discover with students from all walks of life is that the opinions of others regarding their choice of college can really influence where they ultimately end up going. And so we have to kind of keep an eye on that. So it's not just a question of being a good college counselor with individual students. It's also a question of being a good college counselor to your community and making sure that they support the students in the way they need. So those are sort of the three biggies. How do you do this? Well, there's some really small print for you to try and sort out. But I put them all on the same screen to simply outline that there are lots of tools out there to help you achieve those three goals. And so everything from online college search sites to things like Common App and Score and online applications, online test prep, group presentations, classroom presentations, questionnaires, bulletin boards, newsletters, your own texting devices, your own email to students. A lot of times when counselors think about college counseling, they're like, I just don't have time to do that because I have to do it individually with every kid. And I don't really want to spend my time telling every kid how to apply for the SAT. Well, you don't have to do that. There are resources out there and communication methods out there that students are very comfortable with that will give them the opportunity to understand the basics, so that you're not, if you do individual meetings, and I would encourage you to try and find a way to do that. If you do individual meetings, you don't have to waste them or spend that time going over how to take the SAT or what goes into an effective college campus visit. That stuff can be handled other places, and you can spend that time really talking about the things that are of particular concern to the student, or that are really designed to help meet their individual needs. So these tools all exist. And that last one, I want to just emphasize a little bit: realigning existing meetings to meet college counseling goals. I had the high privilege of working at a lot of different places, a lot of different high schools, and yet with every one of them, we always had junior meetings to talk about senior year schedule, and we always had senior meetings to talk about senior schedule review, if only to make sure they were going to graduate from high school on time. Well, there are ways to make sure you still do those important tasks, but that you actually shift the balance of those times to talk about what's next and to make those meaningful discussions about career options, college options, and so forth. So if you're thinking, I don't have time to do college counseling because of all the other mental health needs that my students have, I would urge you to take a look at your schedule and look at the existing stuff that you have and ask yourself, where can we do some minor shifting so that college counseling becomes more of a reality in my curriculum? Okay, so if you're looking for help, if you're saying to yourself, well, okay, but what does a junior parent questionnaire look like? What's a form that I use to conduct an effective individual meeting? Well, a couple of things. First, I would say you want to join the College Admission Counselors Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, you're going to want to just search for College Admissions Counselors. and that will give you that group. Part of the highlight there is that it has a resource library connected with it. So, folks will go on to the College Admission Counselors Facebook group and say, what's a form you use for scholarships? What's a form you use to sort out a student's interest in colleges? What's a questionnaire that you use to ask parents what they're expecting from the process? You don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel there. The resource library from the College Admission Counselors Facebook group has some pretty vast stuff there that you can, with some minor tweaking, customize and help meet your needs. It's also the place where a lot of college counselors from throughout the world go to say, okay, looking for a kid, looking at a school for a kid who's this. Does anybody know what's going on with Indiana University? And so, if you're concerned that you're sort of out of the loop when it comes to issues in college counseling, or you don't have anybody to talk to, you do now, because College Admission Counselor Facebook group is free. And this is a place where a lot of folks who work by themselves or feel they are working by themselves have a chance to get the help they need, get the support they need, and get the answers that they need. The other option, of course, is to join your state or regional MACAC affiliate. If you're with this program, chances are you're already familiar with MACAC. But let me just also suggest that if you're ready to take the next step, if you've been involved with MACAC through these professional development programs, let me encourage you to consider signing up for one of the many MACAC committees, because it can be extremely helpful. It can really build your college counseling network in very important ways. Quick story: I walked into my office one day in high school, and a student came in and said, "Well, I'm not going to college because I'm homeless. We lost our home and we've been evicted." And so I said, "Well, remind me where you're going to school." And she told me. Well, it turns out I was on a committee with the director of admissions at that school. And so I called her and I said, "Okay, look, what can we do here?" And at the end of the day, thanks to that phone call, and I was able to make that phone call only because we had worked together on a committee. At the end of the day, my student was able to go back to college because we found a spare $40,000 for her to go to school. That happened because of MACAC. That happened because I was on a committee. I wasn't even chair of the committee. I just knew this person. So let me encourage you. A lot of times principals are like, well, committee's just, a waste of time. It doesn't help the kids. It helps the kids a lot. So I would encourage you to give some thought to that as well. Oh, sorry. Keep hitting the wrong clicker there. Okay. Now, we're talking about shaping services through the college counseling curriculum. And it's important, even for many veteran counselors, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we do have a curriculum. We have content in our curriculum, just like the English curriculum, just like the science curriculum. It's just this happens to be the college counseling curriculum. And so, and the things we already talked about, doing a college search, finding out what colleges are all about. But in addition to that, part of a curriculum that most people don't think about are the skills that students leave with as a result of having successfully navigated a college counseling curriculum. And there's the list. Now, take a look at those. I think you would agree that all of those skills are indeed part of the college counseling process. You got to plan, you got to communicate, you have to organize your time, you have to manage yourself, you have to manage others. And these are important skills. If you take something as simple as asking a teacher for a letter of recommendation and following through to make sure they've sent it and to thank them for it, that requires planning, it requires communication, it requires management of others. And the thing that all these skills on the screen have in common is that they are key elements for success in college. So lo and behold, college counseling is not just a question of filling out the forms and hoping for the best. It's actually acquiring skills that ultimately will help you be successful in college, including that second one, social interaction and exposure through extracurriculars. Can't really emphasize that one enough. Part of every student's extracurricular commitment should be some kind of awareness about the world around them. And so helping guide them to that is an integral part of the college counseling curriculum. Okay, So let's talk for a second about the overview of the college counseling curriculum. And this is from, there's the link there. This was a blog I wrote a couple of years ago that was called College Counseling in 500 Words or Less. And I, many high school counselors have actually just forwarded that column to their students as a way of introducing them to the college selection process, because it goes through everything from soup to nuts. This is from High School Counselor Week, and that's where you go to subscribe. This is not I'm not trying to get any money out of this. I don't get any money off of this column. I'm just saying High School Counselor Week itself is a great tool because it's delivered to your email, and it's a weekly summary of current issues and events that high school counselors need to stay up on top of, not just in college counseling, but in the world of college in general. It's free to subscribe. It's a great tool to stay current in about 10 minutes worth of reading. So let's sort of do a drill down. These next dozen slides or so are actually part of a slide package I put together for counselors on the college selection process to share with their faculty, because these slides not only talk about the process and the curriculum itself, but the role teachers can play in bringing that stuff to life. And it really is important to remember, gang, you're not alone in this process. You think you may be, and I can understand why, but you can build a very effective team if you're able to find the time to reach out to them. And this next 12 slides or so makes a great faculty meeting presentation, or presentation to others through email, to give teachers an indication as to how they can help you in your efforts to be an effective college counselor. Right. So of course, the first step is, what is college? And again, a reminder, it's more than just four-year colleges. What we do is we explain options after high school to continue learning. And what teachers can do is talk about pathways related to your subject matter. So, taking 5 minutes at the start of a class and saying, well, yeah, you're in a biology class, and let me talk to you about some things you could do with this as a career, things you could do with this in college. And then, much more important than that, teachers can explain their story. Talk about their college path. And, some teachers have fascinating stories about how they got where they are as a teacher. I had a chance to do this one year with a woman who went to engineering school and got her degree in engineering, and was in the field for a little while and realized this just wasn't her calling. It wasn't her thing. And so she then made the jump to college, or to teaching, and then just became actually one of the best math teachers I've ever known. So, a lot of times when teachers tell their story, it inspires students. And the sort of, and it's a funny one, but at one point, a colleague of mine, another counselor, was working with a student, and she said, "Well, what do you want to do after high school?" And after about 2 or 3 meetings, the student finally felt comfortable enough to say, "I want to be a gym teacher." And the counselor said, "Gosh, that's great, but if you want to be a gym teacher, you got to go to college." Um, and the student looked at her and then said, "Wait, our gym teacher went to college?" And then he said, bless his heart, "Well, if our gym teacher can go to college, I can go to college. What do I have to do?" So sometimes you end up being an inspiration for all the wrong reasons, but it still works out pretty well. So what is college? How do I choose my college path? Okay, if I decide that college is the choice for me, how do they know what's best for them, right? And so, again, it's really important here to make sure everybody understands there's no such thing as the path to pick. Some students will say, "I want to do this for a career," and then go backwards and say, "Okay, from there, what's the training?" For other students, they're like, "Well, I just haven't made up my mind yet, but I want to continue to learn and explore about myself and about the world." That's why we have liberal arts colleges. Half the colleges in the United States don't ask you to declare your major until you're almost done with your second year, because they want you to go to college and see how bigger the world is outside of your high school. So it's okay that you don't pick a major. For other folks, it's going to be, well, I want to go I want to go to college in Florida. For other folks, it's going to be, well, I'm open to any college as long as there's a strong religious tradition. Or I want to make sure it's someplace warm. Or I want to make sure that they have study abroad. Or so there's lots of great reasons why kids want to pick a particular college path. And there's no such thing as a bad one. They're all different. And that's what makes our job wonderful, because then once they tell us what they're looking for, then we have to sort of fill in some blanks to make sure we're helping them put together a list that has value to them. So that's what we can do. And again, teachers can talk about career paths. They can bring in class speakers to address that topic and sort of address that end of the game. Okay. Next, of course, as we've already talked about, be ready for college. Make the most of your learning experiences in and out of the classroom. Once again, that's where we end up with the value of the learning opportunities involved with extracurriculars. And again, this is more than just grades. We know of a lot of students who are B students who are much better students than the A students because they were challenged, right? So it's about developing study skills. It's about understanding ideas. It's about seeing ideas between different subjects. How does math relate to science? How does history relate to science? And there's lots of connections there, but a lot of times students don't see those unless they're able to be pointed to them by their faculty, right? And it's also, of course, about learning about life's key skills outside the classroom. So what we do is we talk about schedules, we talk about extracurriculars, we talk about community service. Teachers can do the same things and discuss extracurriculars in and related to their classes. It also would be helpful, quite honestly, and I didn't put this on the screen because it can be viewed as a little controversial, but it's also important for teachers to review their grading and assignment requirements for their classes in a way that makes sure that the student is being challenged sufficiently. I had a math teacher once who, as part of the final exam, had the students do a research paper on a famous mathematician. And one of the questions the students had to address was, what were the important social and cultural elements going on during that mathematician's lifetime to show that math relates to the larger world? Those kinds of assignments are really important because it makes sure that history is relating to other things, that math is related to other things, and it gets the student thinking in bigger and broader ways. Okay, next, of course, visit college campuses, and web pages are okay, but they don't really tell the whole story. Well-planned visits can give students a real sense of what it's like to be at that college. And that's important, right? Again, for me, the three things that make a successful college fit are where the student feels the right amount of support, challenge, and opportunity. You don't want it too easy, you don't want it too hard, but as you challenge yourself, you also want to make sure there are resources and an atmosphere on college that says, yeah, we support you and we support this challenge. Let's work on this as a community. So, there's the stuff that we do, all right, and talk about the most to make the most out of a visit. If the teachers know some folks, that's great. What's really key is that if a student ends up missing a class, that the teacher understands that, because the teacher needs to realize that this kid's not going to be in high school forever. And it's really important that they go visit a campus, even if that means sometimes missing a class or two. Okay, next step, which for some students will probably mean a little bit less than for others, is to prepare and take either the ACT or the SAT. And so, I realize that thanks to COVID, we have a lot of options where that's not necessary. I still recommend that students who ask me, I still recommend they plan on taking one of those two tests, just in case they end up falling in love in senior year with a school that requires a test score, or at a school where having a good test score would help them get in, because there still are some places where strong test scores make a difference. So we figure out how the best way for some students to prepare for the test. For some, that's self-monitored test prep, that's self-paced test prep that's online. Others may need to feel like there's a test prep class that they need to take, and some are available, again, online for low cost. Advise students on when to take the test, how to register for them, and make sure you discuss test results and the need to retest. I have always been a big advocate for having students try and complete their testing by the end of the junior year, with 2 testing experiences by the end of the junior year. For me, what that means is that in case the student needs to do something over the summer or in the fall, they'll have the opportunity to do that. It also puts them in a position where if a college is requiring a test score that also wants them to apply early in September or October, the student is in a position to do that, right? What teachers can do, be aware of test dates and their relationship to student anxiety. Be aware of test dates in case teachers are going to assign major tests or major papers or something. They're going to want to avoid those test dates. And very often, teachers can sometimes help students prepare for the test if they so choose. Okay, and then again, apply to college. This is one of those areas that I often, believe it or not, start with for most students, because a lot of students who are turned off to applying to college are convinced that this is a process that's going to require hours and hours of work and 6 or 7 essays per college, and they just don't want to deal with that. The reality is, quite honestly, that the majority of colleges in the United States, you can fill out the college application in about 20 minutes. And I want to take just a second to talk about one of the best college counselors I ever worked with. This was in a low-income first-gen high school, not a lot of college-going tradition there. And one week, the college counselor went to the English department and said, "I need to borrow the seniors for an entire class period all this week." And the English department was thrilled because, if you're gonna do a visit, by the way, if you're gonna put on a presentation in a classroom, most of the time you need to plan on taking the kids for the entire period so that the teacher has the whole period off. You give them 15 minutes off, they're not going to be crazy. They're going to love it when you give them the whole period. So this counselor did that, went to each English class individually throughout the week, and walked them down to the computer center. When the students came in, they sat down to a computer that was already open to the college application screen for the local community. And the college counselor said, "Okay, kids, today we're going to apply to college. The form is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to walk around, and feel free to ask me any questions you might have, but go ahead and get started." And what happened? I mean, this was at the beginning of these kids' college process, and so they looked, and it was like name, address, date of birth, where'd you go to high school, when you're going to graduate, what classes are you taking. This particular community college didn't ask for a major, and the students didn't even have to complete that. Well, of course, what happened was after about 20 minutes of a 45-minute class period, a lot of kids, in fact, most kids, were done. And it's at that point things got interesting, because at that point, a student got up and went and talked to the counselor and said, "Well, Mrs. Smith, I completed the application because you asked me to, but to tell you the truth, I've been looking into some colleges and I have some other plans." And Mrs. Smith said, "Oh, that's great. Where are you thinking about applying?" And the student told her, and Mrs. Smith said, "Well, that's wonderful. I'm pretty sure that college has an online application. Why don't you go back to the computer and get started on that one? And if you don't finish it, that's okay. You can save it, but you can get off to a pretty good start." Well, because that one student, of course, asked about what to do next, now you've got half to 2/3 of the rest of the students doing the exact same thing, looking up their college of interest and starting another college application. Now, have you got a few kids who are just going to play video games for the rest of the period? Yeah, but that's not the end of the world, because they've done what you asked them to do. What you've done here, what she did here that was brilliant, is she broke the myth that applying to college was tough, right? And so that's really important. So, of course, here's what we do. We develop personalized lists. We make sure they understand the different kinds of applications, the different kinds of application deadlines, and send supporting materials to the college. What teachers can do, again, be aware of those key application deadlines as it relates to heavy-duty assignments. Carefully consider a request for student letters of recommendation. By the way, I always had students ask for them in the spring of the junior year, because that gave the teachers the summer to actually write the letters of recommendation. Teachers have to make sure that they make deadlines too, and communicate regularly with students asking for recommendations. This should not be a situation where the teacher just says okay in June and then waits for the student to come back to them. This needs to be, your teachers are entering into a mutual relationship here, and that proves to be pretty important. So that's kind of where we are with it. Okay. Sorry. Right. Again, elements of a strong letter of recommendation. I'm going to leave that for you to take a look at. But, a lot of teachers are convinced these things have to be incredibly long and that they have to be incredibly, detailed. And it's like, realistically, the goal of an effective letter of recommendation, it answers the question, what is it like to work with the student on a regular basis? And so, rather than start with this sort of vague, I've known Susie for 3 years and she's got a 4.2 and, she's a cheerleader and she was in the school play. A lot of teachers feel the need to start that letter of recommendation with vague information that's already someplace else in the application because they think that shows that they know the student. Colleges could care less about that stuff, especially if it's someplace else in the application. Start with a story about the student. I'll never forget the day in class when Susie understood what titration really did in chemistry. And then she asked 3 questions that I knew everybody else was thinking about, but she was the one that brought them up. And that's when I really started to pay attention to Susie as a leader in my class. You start with that paragraph, you can say just about anything else in that letter. But the middle paragraphs, of course, again, talk about examples of what the student, not just adjectives, curiosity, leadership, creativity, great to see, but they want to know, well, how do you know those exist in the student? How did they demonstrate themselves? If you know them outside as a coach or a drama teacher or whatever, that relationship can be strong, but it's not necessary. Don't feel the need to again, show off, right? And then in the signature, your name, how long you've known the student, and how long you've taught. Again, a big mistake a lot of these folks, a lot of teachers, well-meaning teachers make, is that they start by saying, well, I've been a teacher for 25 years and I've taught award winners and blah, blah, blah. They don't want to know about you. They want to know about the student. Feed them what they're asking for first, and then the information about you briefly mentioned at the end, and that'll take a list. But don't include a list of extracurriculars because, again, that's someplace else, and you only get a page, and it really is only a page. So we want to make sure that letter does the trick. Okay, applying for financial aid, again, we want to start that conversation early and convince students that college is more affordable than most people think. That's why it's important to have a program like a Paying for College Night that you invite 9th grade parents to and 9th grade students to. And again, there's the online stuff from the education department and FAFSA.gov that where you can actually get an estimate as to what your financial aid might be. And of course, all colleges have something called a net price calculator, where you fill in some basic financial information, and they give you a ballpark as to what it would cost. Using those with 9th, 10th, and 11th graders wakes them up to the possibility that college is possible. But if you're going to do that, you also have to figure out a way to get that to the parents so they understand that college is possible, right? And here's what we do, of course. We explain what financial aid is, the 3 kinds. We offer Paying for College workshops. We don't call them financial aid nights because people won't show up. We call them Paying for College nights because they will show up. Review financial aid officers with students and discuss where and how to look for scholarships and what's out there, right? If the teacher is willing to talk about their financial aid story with students and parents and how it helped them play, how those help them play a role in successfully navigating, that's important as well. One of the other big factors that I find in this area that's important is for students to understand that they don't have to take, if the college offers them a 3-part financial aid package that's grant, loan, and work study, if they don't want the loan, they don't have to take it. Now, they're not going to get more money from the college, most likely, but they don't have to take the loan if they don't. Okay, make the choice. And again, we go back to the big three of challenge, opportunity, and support. We make sure the student has the support of the family. Um, we make sure they understand the financial implications of the choice. And this is where teachers can be very affirming about these choices. This is one of those things where if a student doesn't choose college, we should celebrate those kids as much as everybody else, because if they've worked with us, that means they have made a choice that they firmly believe is in their best interest, and we celebrate that with every kid, every kid. The key that you want to, at this point, that you want the teachers to do is look for the seniors who suddenly may be a little more withdrawn. Because at this point, if they're having a change, if by late April, early May, they're having sort of a change in outlook or a change in their personality, that could be related to some concerns about leaving high school or some low self-esteem issues about the choices they're left with for life after high school. And that's important for us to try and support that student before they head out after graduation. Okay, stay in touch with your college. I can't emphasize this part enough. A lot of times once students are in, they stop paying attention to email, they stop paying attention to us, they stop paying attention to the college. And the reality is if they don't turn in health forms and they don't get confirmatory information into financial aid, they may lose their scholarship, they may be de-enrolled, they may go, this is all called summer melt. And so we want to make sure that our colleges are staying in touch with these folks and over time, so that particularly after they're done with high school, because they need to understand that it's an integral part of making a successful transition. Okay, and then again, ask for help once you get to college. There are lots of reasons why students do not succeed at the college level. And the primary one, quite honestly, is because they just think it's an extension of high school. For the average student, that doesn't work because there are two things about college classes that make them different from high school classes: the amount of information that's being consumed and the pace at which it's being taught. So the year-long algebra class that you took in ninth grade, yeah, there will be some students who will take that in college, but it won't be a year. It'll be 15 weeks long. The classes, the advanced math classes, like calculus, that you may have spent a year in or could spend a year in high school, will also be taught in 15 weeks. So that means the students are going to have continue to grow in their study skills, in their approach to learning. These classes tend to be offered formally only 2 or 3 times a week, which means the students are going to have to be responsible for a lot more studying. So we really have to make sure they understand things like time management, interpersonal relationship skills, making the most of office hours and contacting instructors ahead of time before something bad happens. All keys. For your above average students, this is especially important. Why? Your above average students, and I say this with all respect to all high schools that I'm talking to, the above average student, many of them are not used to studying because they haven't had to very much. Some of them just really get it and don't really need to spend time doing studying. All of them are used to the fact that they are sort of the top dog. They're in the top 10. They're the valedictorian. And so they're sort of used to enjoying that rare air where they're at the top of the class. Well, if these really bright kids end up at some of those highly popular schools that are in turn also very competitive, there isn't going to be anybody underneath them. They're all going to be valedictorians. They're all going to be salutatorians. And that creates a very different learning environment when everybody was the smartest kid in high school. They're going to have the social emotional skills and the interpersonal relationship skills to make that transition work. And so if you have any reason to doubt that that kid's not going to be successful with that, it's time to get them in touch with a life coach or a success coach or a therapist, and also make sure that they have access to that information at colleges, because this is where a lot of bright kids just fall down. They get to college and realize they just aren't the star of the show anymore, and they don't know what to do with that. So we develop programs and hold meetings to talk with students about college success, and teachers can support those events. or those activities in the very same. Okay, so now the question becomes, okay, we know college counseling has a curriculum. We know it has stuff to do with. How do we find time to do this? Well, okay, the short version is that if you're thinking about doing something new, if you're thinking about creating newsletters, if you're thinking about creating new group meetings, if you're thinking about creating a college counseling handbook, you're not going to be able to squeeze that in. These are going to be devoted activities. And so you just have to fess up and say, okay, I'm going to end up spending a little more time on work, and this is why. My advice would be, as you figure out how to create your communication tools and develop the ways to demonstrate your college counseling curriculum, find a way to start with tools that can be recycled. So when I first started, every Thursday morning, I went into the office early for an hour and put together a weekly newsletter. And this weekly newsletter went to juniors in the second semester and then seniors in their first semester. And each newsletter was about a page long and said, okay, if you're thinking about going to college, this is what you ought to be focusing on for this week. And then sent that newsletter to parents, students, and the entire faculty. I knew what my college curriculum was. They didn't, and everybody needed to know it. And also, of course, the administration, right? So every Thursday I would go in, write this, and send it out. And that's what I did before school started at 8 o'clock. Well, okay. Once that year was over, I then was able to go in Thursdays at 8 o'clock, pull up the newsletter from the year before, the same week of the year before, and say, oh, okay, well, in the second week in February, this is what I sent to the juniors. Has any of this changed? No, not really. I'd tweak it a little bit and send the same thing out. You can recycle the information because the audience has changed. This is still meaningful information to a brand new audience. And so I would encourage you to start your searches and start your time in developing your curriculum by using tools that can be recycled. Okay? Again, find time within your existing offerings. Again, junior schedule review for senior year is a classic example. Most kids know what they want to take. They know what they need to graduate. You don't have to spend 15 minutes on that. That's a 5-minute activity followed by 10 minutes of let's talk college. And again, use large-scale means to communicate the nuts and bolts. Yeah, it would drive me crazy too if I had to explain the SAT individually to 300 kids. So instead, do that through group meetings, do that through newsletters, do that through your college counseling handbook, right? And so finding the time, I think, again, for a combination of maybe setting an hour a week for developing new communication tools that can be recycled, plus using existing offerings for new purposes, can really open up some college counseling options for you. Okay, if you're looking for other resources, there's a book that I've written that called College Counseling for School Counselors. It was written a couple of years ago, and so there are a couple of things that don't apply anymore, but it still is appearing regularly in Amazon's Hot 100 for school counselors. And so that's a great tool with very short chapters to give you a feel for what college counseling is all about. And if you're looking to give students a guide with very short chapters, about 2 pages each, that walks them through the process step by step, I wrote that book as well. And this is shameless self-promotion. These are both available through Amazon. Yeah, I do make a little money off of them, but a lot of that money actually ends up going to various assorted activities to support students in the college counseling process. But again, I would encourage you to, if these books are of interest, that you can find those there. If you're going to MACAC, if you're going to the MACAC conference, I have the good fortune of doing a presentation with Hannah Reed, and I'll likely drag a few complimentary copies of these books to give out there. So if you're going to MACAC, we can probably touch base there as well. Okay, great. Okay, so thanks for your patience. I think we've got time for a few questions. So let me see what's going on in the chat. And
Patrick, I put a bunch of links in the chat of things that your posts that you were referencing. I just gave them a hyperlink.
Great. Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if we have questions, Sheila.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I don't see any yet.
Okay. Terrific.
One of the
Great.
things I was going to ask you, Patrick, is
Yeah.
just for a second. So what do you see? What are the biggest issues right now in the college counseling programs? I know that the numbers are always an issue, number of students to counselors, but what else do you see, excuse me, as, some of the biggest issues that you see in the programs today?
Yeah, Sheila, that's actually a great question. I think one of the challenges for most school counselors is that, particularly in a post-COVID era, there seems to be a real emphasis on the mental health aspect of school counseling. And I want to be clear about this. It's extremely important. We never want to send a student to college who doesn't have the self-esteem and a sense of the self-worth that's going to be necessary for college to be a successful experience for them. That said, I think sometimes school counselors can overlook the power of successful college counseling as a mental health tool. I don't know about everybody else's experiences, but there were a number of times where I said to a student, where I showed a student what was possible with college and said, this is a fresh start. There are lots of ways to look at college, but we can help you pick a college where you get to start all over again. Doesn't matter what you did in high school, doesn't matter who you knew in high school, doesn't matter what you did in third grade. You can leave this small town, you can leave this community, you can go to a college nobody from this community goes to. You can start all over again. And when some students understand that college is that, then they will move heaven and earth to get to that new opportunity. And all of a sudden, a lot of the self-esteem issues are resolved because they see themselves as capable of earning a new start. So, again, I fully understand and greatly respect the challenges that our young people are facing as a result of COVID and their families as well. And the mental health role is vital, but don't underestimate the power of effective post-secondary advising as an effective mental health tool.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Here's another question from somebody. They said, thank you for the presentation. I hope the question is not too niche. I primarily work with at-risk ninth graders. Can you tell me the top 2 or 3 things or practices, et cetera, that I should work into my year? Good question.
Oh, wow. Great question. Well, one thing we didn't address, of course, is the notion that there will be very different, there are different community expectations. And so part of what you have to address first is, what do most of your ninth graders know about college? And it may be that if they know an awful lot, then you can start having, individualized discussions about what they're looking for in college. If not, you may have to start with the basics of what is college, get them to a college campus, and do those kinds of things. In terms of at-risk folks, I think the first thing to sort out is think about what challenges they're facing and how those might play out on a college campus. What would be, for me, the key question there is, what services are going to be needed by those students on a college campus to be successful there, and what colleges are known for offering those services. So I think I would start out with that. But the other piece would be working with students and parents to show them that college is a possibility. Because a lot of times with at-risk students, they're like, yeah, I can't do college. And when they say they can't do college, they mean no technical training, no community college, nothing. And so it's a wonderful opportunity at this point to really sort out what they're looking forward to about what's next. And, the challenge there is that with at-risk students, that's a discussion you probably need to start sooner than with most students, because you're going to have to build up a little confidence as you get them ready. So, self-esteem, understanding what their individual needs are and finding places that best meet those needs, and introducing students to the concept of college would be the 3 things I would say you'd want to emphasize.
Okay, great, thank you. So another question I think is for us, maybe Hannah, do you have to be a member to join the workshops later in the month? We have more webinars coming up. I think that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, so there's one more webinar in this series on March 11th, next Monday, and that's a Welcome to MACAC webinar. If you're not a member, I would say come to that webinar and we can help get you plugged in, because we wouldn't want you to not come just because you're not a member. And the conference, you know, Patrick was referencing the annual conference. That's March 19th and 20th, and I believe the registration is already full for that conference. But certainly join us for that webinar next week. I put the link to register in the chat, and then if you're interested in future conferences and things like that, we can make sure you get that info.
Thank you, Hannah. So I think I don't see any more questions coming up. So I'm gonna say thank you so much, Patrick, for coming. It was a great synopsis of you could start a whole college counseling program on the information that you gave today. So that was awesome.
Well, thanks for the chance again, Hannah and Sheila. Appreciate that. And just a reminder, there's for folks who have questions that I might be able to be of help with, there's my email address. Feel free to contact me anytime, and good luck and enjoy your spring.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.